Hello, welcome to the Mythology Manifest. In a couple of weeks, I will hopefully be returning to college to begin my second year. For my second year classics course, I will be focusing on Greek theatre and Greek religion. For the Greek theatre section, we will be reading and analysing 3 plays: Aristophanes' Frogs, Euripides' Bacchae, and Sophocles' Oedipus Rex. So before I return to college, I would like to do a video on each of these plays covering the themes, characters and plot lines, and I will put these videos in the revision material playlist on my channel. For today's video, I am going to be going over Sophocles' Oedipus Rex. I hope you enjoy it. So first of all, I'm going to go over the backstory of the Oedipus myth, as this play does not start there because most ancient Greeks would have already known the myth. If they didn't, then this play would confuse and disturb them greatly. So this myth begins in Thebes, where the king Laius and the queen Jocasta have had a baby boy, and they go to the oracle of Delphi for a prophecy about the child. The oracle, who was Apollo's earthly messenger, gives a horrific prophecy that the child will kill his father and marry his mother and have children with her. Terrified by this, Laius and Jocasta want the child killed, but know that it would be a crime against the gods to commit infanticide, and so they decide to take him into the woods and chain his ankle to a rock, and decide that the gods will decide his fate, hoping that he would die in the forest. This doesn't happen, and a herdsman, who was also a servant of Laius, finds the child chained to a rock and rescues him. The chain gave the baby a swollen foot, and so the servant of Laius names the child Swollen Foot, which in ancient Greek was the name Oedipus. Oedipus is then given to another shepherd and raised by him and his wife, and one day he himself is told that he will kill his father and marry his mother, and so he decides to leave so that he does not harm his adoptive parents. This confuses me, as the shepherd and his wife had the chance then and there to tell Oedipus the truth, but they don't. They let him leave, so really the rest of the horrid incidents of this myth and the play are down to them. Oedipus decides he will go from Corinth, where he was raised, to Thebes, and on his journey he comes across the Sphinx, who he defeats by answering her riddle, and then he continues on his journey. On his way to Thebes, Oedipus arrives at a crossroads at the same time as the king of Thebes, Laius, who was Oedipus's birth father. Obviously, neither know who the other is, and Laius tries to run Oedipus down with his horses, and so Oedipus pulls him down off one of the horses and accidentally kills him, but the herdsman Laius is travelling with escapes. Not knowing who the man he had just murdered was, Oedipus flees the scene and goes to Thebes. In Thebes, he meets the queen Jocasta, his mother, whose husband has just been murdered, and at this point no one puts 2 and 2 together, and so Jocasta and Oedipus fall in love, get married and have 4 children by the names of Eteocles, Polynices, Antigone and Ismene, who are the focus of another play by Sophocles. Now, here is the thing that irritates me about this part of the myth. Jocasta knows of a prophecy that her husband will be killed by her son and that they will marry and have children. She has no proof that her son is dead, and if most people were in her situation, they would never marry again. But Jocasta marries a stranger her son's age with a swollen ankle like her son, just after her husband is mysteriously killed. All of the signs were there. Oedipus had no idea he left his adoptive family to save them, so really it's not his fault. But surely the 2 of them must have discussed the reason that he left his home in the first place. But I suppose Sophocles needed a few plot holes to allow his tale to work. So now we get to the actual play. Oedipus is the king of Thebes, which is why the play is called Oedipus Rex or Oedipus Tyrannus. Both translate to either King Oedipus or Oedipus the Tyrant. And Jocasta is his queen, and they have their 4 children, just as a mysterious plague has recently afflicted the city, bringing death to the people, livestock and the crops. This is a punishment from the gods. Oedipus sends Creon, who is the brother of Jocasta, so Oedipus's brother-in-law and uncle, to the oracle of Delphi to find out what they're meant to do to stop the plague. A priest and his followers ask Oedipus to find a way to save them from the plague just as Creon returns, and reports that they need to find the murderer of Laius. the former king. Oedipus, still unaware that it was he that killed the king, promises he will find and punish the man that did it. He summons Tiresias, the famous blind prophet, to tell them what he knows. At first, Tiresias refuses to speak, but when pressed, he tells Oedipus that the murderer he seeks is Oedipus himself, but not in so many words. Tiresias is very cryptic and never gives a straight answer, which is why this play can be so irritating to read. It is very much similar to Tiresias, just spit it out, and for God's sake, Oedipus, figure it out already. How many times do you really need to be told that you killed your father? Anyway, Oedipus and the chorus refuse to believe the prophet, and Oedipus accuses Tiresias and Creon of plots and corruption. Jocasta intervenes and tells Oedipus not to worry, and that they will find Laius' murderer. She still has no idea what's going on, which really confuses me. Oedipus starts to ask questions about Laius' death and the circumstances, being that Laius was pulled off a horse and killed at a crossroad, begin to sound familiar to him. But a messenger comes from Corinth to say that Oedipus' adoptive father is dead, so he doesn't need to worry about the prophecy. Oedipus asks about his adoptive mother, since there's that other tiny part of the prophecy about him marrying and having children with her, and that is when the messenger finally reveals that Oedipus is adopted. Finally, after all of that, and a bit too late considering they've literally been told what has happened far too many times for them not to have understood, Jocasta realises the truth, that Oedipus is her son as well as her husband and father of her children, and she tells Oedipus to stop the interrogation. He doesn't listen, and an eyewitness, who turns out to be the herdsman who rescued Oedipus when he was an infant, confirms that he is Laius and Jocasta's child, and that Oedipus killed Laius through the use of a messenger speech, which is one of the key aspects of Greek theatre. And after that, a servant reports the suicide of Jocasta, as death and suicide was not allowed to be shown on the stage. And Oedipus emerges from the house having blinded himself. He seeks exile and mourns with his children, who are eventually taken from him, and in the end, Creon takes over Thebes. So that is the plot of Oedipus Rex. It's definitely not a happy play, which makes sense as it is a tragedy, but it is viewed by scholars as one of the best plays written in history. I would say that the main themes of this play are fate, free will, and prophecies, as the play is entirely centred around the characters from the myth trying to escape the prophecy, but not being able to and making it happen anyway. The background themes are probably family relationships, and not the good kind, and politics, as Oedipus is convinced everyone wants his throne, which is why he is so blind and arrogant to what is happening before him, which is why sometimes the myth and the play is sometimes translated to Oedipus the Tyrant. The person who wrote this play was Sophocles, and he is viewed as one of the three fathers of tragedy and theatre. He added a third actor to the stage, increased the number of chorus members from 12 to 15 but reduced their role, and was a prominent figure in ancient Athens, which would explain this play's major significance in the Athenian celebration of the Dionysia. I would say that this play doesn't completely fit with the three main elements of a tragic plot, as they are suffering, recognition, and reversal. I would say this plot fits the first two, suffering and recognition, but not the third, as instead of a reversal, we just get more and more suffering, including the death of Jocasta and Oedipus clawing out his own eyes before being ripped away from his children and being cast into exile. So this tragic plot is more suffering, recognition, suffering. As a character, I would say that Oedipus does fit in with the stereotypical tragic hero. He was in the middle of good and bad, and he was at neither extreme at any point, and he was of high status as a king, and has a hamartia, which is a fatal mistake, not fatal flaw, which leads to a disastrous outcome. And they are the three main aspects of being a tragic hero: not being at extremes with emotions or moral compass, being of high status, and having a hamartia. So really he does fit in with being a tragic hero in my opinion. The final point that I would like to make about this play is that I believe Oedipus Rex's plot fits with Freytag's triangle very well. For those of you that don't know what that is, it is a triangle which shows how any tragic plot should go. You have the beginning, which is where there is an incentive moment. In Oedipus Rex, this is the plague and the desperation to find out how it is being caused and who killed Laius. Then you have the dasis, where there are complications and the action is constantly rising. So in this play, it is when Tiresias comes and Oedipus refuses to believe him and Creon that he is the murderer of Laius. Then at the top we get the peripeteia, which is the climax where everything suddenly makes sense. And this is when Oedipus is told that he's adopted and he and Jocasta figure out that they are both mother and son as well as husband and wife. And here we then get the denouement, which is the falling in action where everything goes wrong. So here we would have Jocasta killing herself, Oedipus clawing out his own eyes, and him being taken away from his family. And finally, here we get the end, where things are resolved. And we do actually get that in this play, which we don't always get, but in this play, the plague is ceased and Oedipus is exiled and Thebes gets a new ruler. So really, this play does fit in very well with Freytag's triangle. And they are all the points I really wanted to make about Oedipus Rex. I hope this video is useful to anyone that watches it, either to gain an understanding of the play or the myth. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please comment and let me know. And also, please feel free to like and subscribe. This video will go in both the revision playlist and Greek Mythology Manifest playlist, as it explains a myth and something that people will have to revise. So please feel free to check out those two playlists if you want to. And also, you could maybe follow this channel's Twitter page at the Mythology MA1, where I post almost daily mythological information and information about my next videos. There is a link to that in the description below. Let's keep classics alive. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time on the Mythology Manifest.